Welcome back, guys. It's August 7th, 2011. I'm joined today by Ed Haslam, and he's just dropping information bombs on us. So, Ed, go right ahead. Pick up where you left off before you were cut off by the break.
Okay. Well, what I said that Judith Very Baker to me, and they decided not to air her story, but I wanted to get to know her better and know who she was and stuff, and so we arranged to meet, and I got to know her, and I eventually, it took a long time, but I eventually wrote several chapters about her and included that in Dr. Mary's Monkey, which was released in 2007. And I also included a chapter on Lee, who I had sort of studiously avoided, because now I can no longer avoid him, because what Lee was doing was he was basically, Judy was a technical resource. She was an asset that they needed to do this, handle the cancer-causing viruses and make the biological weapon, and they needed somebody to take care of her, because she was like 19, 20 years old at the time, and really had never been out of Bradenton much, her little town in Florida, and she was now in Big Sinsick, New Orleans, and they needed somebody to take care of her and get her to places and show her where her cover job was. And Lee sets her up with a cover job down at the Riley Coffee Company, and finds her an apartment and helps her get around and everything. And so they're in daily contact for months, 4.5, 5 months, between April and September. And there's a lot of detail I could go in with that, but let me just say that that story is summarized in my book, but do yourself a favor and get me and Lee, How I Came to Know, Love, and Lose Lee Harvey Oswald by Judith Very Baker, because it's a amazing read and it's an important piece to the JFK puzzle. And what happened to Mary Sherman? What burned off her arm? Well, she was using this linear particle accelerator. And again, this is after the Kennedy assassination in the summer of 1964, and she gets involved in some kind of electrical incident or industrial accident or whatever you want to call it with this thing, and it blows off her right arm. And so but it doesn't cross her heart. She's still alive. And so she's there in this secret laboratory that is one of the most closely guarded secrets in the United States government. And her arm is burned off, but her heart is still beating, and the sun's about to come up, and they got to do something. So they decide to terminate her. And with a very simple stab wound to the heart, delivered by a surgical instrument, probably by somebody with medical knowledge, because it's very nicely done. And then they put her in a body bag, and they take her back to her apartment where they fake this murder scene. So this is the back of the apartment is where the second set of stab wounds is, but she's got this horrible burn on her. So how are they going to explain this horrible burn? That's why they set the fire back at her apartment. And so they fake this murder scene, and they control all the information about it. And it only winds up as part of the JFK literature in this one Playboy interview with Jim Garrison. Now, let me talk about Garrison for a moment. The heart of Jim Garrison's case was that he had associated Clay Shaw with Lee Oswald. Okay? And he couldn't prove that in court because they stacked the deck against him, all right? But what we know today is positively absolute proof that Clay Shaw was associated with Lee Oswald. And one of the places we know that from, there's a little town up in upper Louisiana called Clinton. It's right down the road from another town called Jackson. That's Jackson, Louisiana, not Jackson, Mississippi. And both of these are by Angola Penitentiary. Okay? Now, why is all this important? Well, in Clinton, Louisiana, which is the county seat, the parish seat up there, right in front of the courthouse, Lee Oswald is seen with Clay Shaw. Now, how do we know it was Lee Oswald there? Well, these people were planning to do something in the area. What they were doing was they had developed this biological weapon, and it killed the mice and gave them cancer. It killed the monkeys and gave them cancer. They needed it, and they were trying to get it into Castro to kill Castro and give him cancer, or give him cancer and kill him, okay? So they wanted to test it on a human. Now, where are you going to get a human you can kill and nobody's going to miss or notice? Well, how about death row over in Angola? So they got somebody to agree to take this patient from Angola and bring it over to the East Louisiana Mental Hospital in Jackson, Louisiana. And they got to go up, and Dave Ferry and Lee Oswald and Clay Shaw go up to deliver the biological weapon to test it on the patient. Okay? But they don't want to wait in this little town of Jackson, Louisiana, because, you know, it'll look kind of suspicious. They're in this big black Cadillac and everything else. So they drive over by the courthouse figuring it's going to be a hot afternoon in Louisiana in August, and nobody's going to be around. They'll just wait by the payphone for the phone call because nobody's got cell phones. It's 1963. And they get there to Clinton, Louisiana, and they forgot to read the newspapers because the day before, on August 28th, Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. And because of that, they're doing black voter registration in this land-controlled town in rural Louisiana, okay? And so everybody's down there because there's a line of blacks trying to register, and everybody's standing around with their arms crossed, and the marshal doesn't want any trouble, and so he's keeping an eye on the situation, and into the scene drives this black Cadillac, okay? So he goes over to the Cadillac and says, here's my badge. Let me see your ID. Who are you? And the guy driving the car takes out his driver's license, shows it to him, says, I am Clay Shaw of the International Trademark. Okay? Now, we know this because we have the town marshal's congressional testimony on it, which was marked secret and hidden from us for 16 years until the Oliver Stone movie came out. But we know...
Yeah, when the JFK movie touched on this.
Right. Well, we know Clay Shaw was driving the car, okay?
They show you him sitting outside the car, leaning against it, and outside where the voter registration office was.
And we know Lee Oswald got out of the car because Lee went and tried to register to vote. We figured they'd let him register because he's white, right? Even though he doesn't live in the area. So Lee actually signs the voter registration thing. So they got Lee's signature there, and they got Clay Shaw driving the car, and therefore we are now able to say 100% for sure that Jim Garrison's central thesis of Clay Shaw was involved with Lee Oswald in New Orleans doing some kind of secret stuff in 1963 was true. And what were they doing? They were injecting this patient, this prisoner / patient at the mental hospital. They injected him with a biological weapon to see if it would work. And then 2 days later, they need to know, and Lee drives Judy back up to this area. It's about 3.5 hours north of New Orleans. It's a long drive, up there and back. I mean, it's a full day. And she goes in and does a blood test and confirms that the cancer has kicked in. And the next day, she is sent out of town, and they're now right at September 1st. And dig this, you remember all that stuff with Lee handing out the Fair Play for Cuba things in New Orleans, all that commie stuff he was doing, and the media appearances? That's all in August. You know what he does in September? He sits around and reads books. Does absolutely nothing political.
Hang on right there. We're going to pick up with the Lee Harvey Oswald connection to all this when we get back. Go check out Ed's website, drmarysmonkey.com. Spell out the word doctor, marysmonkey.com. We'll bring it back.